Welcome back to the Illuminati Roundtable. The COINTELPRO debriefing. No. The MK Ultra Theater, where we're all strapped to our seats with our eyelids open, watching heinous things to classical music. No. What is this? Is Black Hoodie Alchemy. That's what this is, right? Not those other things. I think I was mixing my play with my work again there. I do that sometimes. I'm sorry about that. Definitely none of those other things. So, Black Hoodie Alchemy here on the Fringe FM every Monday night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. I'm your host, Anthony Tyler, and today we're gonna talk about some pretty heavy shit. Viewer discretion advised. Not a joke there. But real quick, I want to say shout out to the one and only Jungle Dolphin, my homie Duncan. He made this fantastic intro. I'm really in love with it. I absolutely adore it. So thank you very much, Duncan. You're my homie. Go check out his some of his recorded material. He's the producer with some of his homies. VEW DEW. Check that out on Spotify or wherever else you stream your music. Also, special shout out to Justin Otto, a host of the Dharma Junkie podcast and a real good friend of mine. I really appreciate all his help for the audio engineering stuff he's helped me with, and because I'm no stranger to this, but it's been a while since I've done some of the editing stuff, and especially since I also expected to do this live more often, and we'll definitely be getting there. So also, I'm working on my peas, the popping of the peas. Hopefully that doesn't come across too aggressive, so we'll see. I think it'll be just fine. Disclaimer there, though, cut me a little slack. Alright, so first off, what I want to talk about, we're going to get into Adolfo Constanzo and the NARCO-SATANISTS cult, the NARCO-SATANISTS. But first, I want to talk about, I want to set the stage a little bit. And so I'm going to read a bit that I found from, there's an old interview you can find online of Philip K. Dick, author of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And many other great stories, but that ended up becoming Blade Runner. So most people are at least familiar with the idea of Blade Runner. Neo-noir detective hunting down androids trying to be humans, and the whole theme is this existential dilemma of what does it even mean to be a human. So Philip K. Dick was always interested in this stuff, and he was very... Here's the thing, especially as he got older, he got more and more mystical, if you will, and he ends up talking about, some of his, straight up visions, and very, very alchemical, mystical. He was very much into Gnosticism, Christian Gnosticism, and, now some people think it gets a bit wooey. Some people would roll their eyes at anybody just getting into sort of mystical philosophy and talking about some of the visions that he had. He talks about things that sound like a hallucinogenic drug. And I mean, mystical experiences pretty much are like that, more often than not. Or at least to some degree or another, always. So... I'm not going to get into Philip K. Dick's experiences like that here, but I will say that he was somebody that even the more he got into these kinds of things, you can find throughout his life, the people who knew him and the things he talked about, you can find that he stayed humble. These things were, they wizened him up more and more, and they kept him humble. And that's kind of the takeaways to these things. If you're not maintaining a sense of humility and gratefulness for life, then the studies and the things that we're doing are not going. They're just going to be jading you, and they're not going to be really helping you or anybody else in the long run. So, I have this little bit in my book, Hunt Manual. It's not going to be too long, but it really sets the stage for how I want to go about talking about Adolfo Constanzo, and how we should, like, this is my relationship to death, and I think this is how the normal person has a relationship to death, and I think that the way Philip K. Dick puts it is very cathartic and not like visceral, but in a not like gory or gritty way. So check it out. You'll see what I mean. Truly, this existential dilemma of the hunt is indirectly summed up perfectly by none other than, yes, old PKD, in an interview given from his living room towards the latter portion of his career. With a deep sense of reflection on his life, his work, and his beliefs, the interview is humble and insightful, and in it Dick reflects on a tumultuous time in which he had to kill a rat that he had been poisoned, or that had been poisoned by a trap in his house. In an attempt to put it out of its misery, it became an existential straw that broke the science fiction author's back and stuck with him for the rest of his life. In the interview, reflecting on this moment, Dick says, quote, "Here was this rat. He was poisoned, his neck was broken, stabbed with the tine of a pitchfork, and he was still alive until he was finally drowned." That's my little insert for you guys. Context. And I buried my St. Christopher's medal with that rat. The soul of that soul of that rat I carried on me from then on as a question and as a problem about the condition of the living creature on this world. That rat had come into my house to get food and had suffered a terrible death and was terrified of me. I would have let it go if I could have let it go, and yet I'd had to kill that rat. I, as its tormentor, could not save it even though I wanted to save it. End quote there. And the author goes on to talk about how that is brought him to his considerations of his Gnostic Christian leanings. The idea that the Gnostic idea that essentially, there's many ways you could go deeper into the structure and the symbolism of Gnosticism, but just general boilerplate is Gnostics believe that they were a spiritual group formed. It's almost like the fourth unsung Abrahamic, because there's Hebrew, Islamic, and Christianity. Well, then there's also Gnosticism, and it is the idea that the Abrahamic God, usually Yahweh particularly, I guess that's all the Abrahamic God, but that's also a debate. But anyway, so Yahweh, as example, is not perfect. And some Gnostics actually consider Yahweh the devil. Now, I don't go that far, but I do think, here's the thing. I think that it shows that when we read even the Bible, when you really parse through religious scripture, that at least that has shaped us in the West. Let's not mince words. Let's just keep it simple. Let's talk about examples. Let's go with the Bible here. You find that Yahweh isn't even perfect in the Bible. Truly, just read it honestly. In the book of Job, it's one of the most stark examples where we see that Yahweh is trying to figure out his relationship to Job just as much as Job is trying to figure out his relationship to Yahweh. So Gnostics essentially believe that there is a God above gods. And there's something greater than Yahweh or any other God. And that's the true God of love. I don't know, you can interpret that however you like. But I do think that the symbolism is very interesting and it's worth considering. I don't subscribe particularly to any school of thought, but Gnosticism has definitely influenced me. I guess if I leaned the most in any direction, it would be Hermeticism. But all that said, I think that there is a really, really pertinent takeaway with the idea that many times throughout life, we as aggressors in a situation can't change the circumstances. Like regardless of the wartime scenario, I'm not even speaking right now, I'm just saying all wartime scenario, regardless of the politics, when you're in the battlefield, you just have to go for it. Kill or be killed at that point, and even if you don't want to. So these are facts of life, genuine facts of life that you're not going to hear as much in New Age consideration. Certainly not laws of attraction. While there are laws of intention, it's much deeper than attraction. And alchemy and Hermeticism, among other things, very much show us that in many cases the law of opposites rules overall. So I have a sense of humility. Even if I gotta kill a mosquito, I still kill them, especially mosquitoes. I'll put up a mousetrap if I have to. But I don't take it lightly. I don't cry. But I very much consider it. I don't take mortality lightly. I respect it, and I appreciate it for what it is. But Adolfo Constanzo definitely did not. So let's talk about this guy here. Adolfo Constanzo of the NARCO-SATANISTs. From, it was like 86 to 89. Constanzo died when he was 25, so this guy was active very early. Let's see, he had a group of 4 individuals, 4 dudes, and actually a priestess as well. And they were part of the narco-Satanists were like a mid-level, like a working, but not like elite. They were drug runners for cartel families. And these families weren't like the most elite, like El Chapo, but they were cartel families. And so they ran different drugs and performed different types of human sacrifice and did certain kinds of Constanzo in particular would perform all sorts of blessings and magical spells of empowerment to local, what do you call it, socialites, just like the local elite, the people who had money, some of the politicians. He didn't have like all of Mexico in his pocket, but the people in his sphere would actually come and legitimately seek his services and pay for those services. And Constanzo lived well, even before all the drug running. And some of that drug running included robbing drug dealers and, like executing some of the cartel families to take over their assets. These guys were hardcore. They were not screwing around. So it starts with Constanzo. His childhood had to do with this offshoot of one of these religions that continued to find its fruition with the slave cultures that were taken from their homelands. Along with voodoo and Santeria, there is Palo. And there are different offshoots of Palo, and there are different tenets of it. And it's actually one of those that's been more obfuscated than the others. Voodoo has been something that's very much interested the culture, the Western culture now, for legitimate and not so, like, for marketing reasons as well. But something like Palo is still very much secreted. Now, there are secret aspects to all these things. You don't know everything until you're in the inner circle, and then you still probably don't know everything. but Palo is something that there's a lot we don't know about. Let's just put it like that. And we don't know fully, we know the basics from like an anthropological sort of perspective, but in terms of the still practicing culture of Palo, it's not exactly like a super well known thing. So we can speculate a little bit, but we don't even really need to do that for this episode. What we do need to talk about is the some of the metaphysics of Palo Mayombe. Now, like I said, Mayombe being an offshoot of Palo, so it's Palo Mayombe. Constanzo was raised. So, well, first I'll say one of the core motifs of this metaphysical belief is ancestral worship, and how you use tethers from the physical world. Like essentially, the physical world is a tether for the spiritual. So they use those tethers to further create and bind and strengthen their relationship to what they call the Nganga, which is I don't claim to know all of it, but it seems to tie into ancestral worship a little bit, but not exclusively. I don't think the Nganga seems to be like an like an environmental spirit, like an elemental in a way, and it's pretty in line with Santeria and things like that. The sacrificing of the chickens and whatnot that would go into this cauldron, and that is the Nganga. And you put in this cauldron all sorts of decomposing parts from sacrificed things, and you let the essence, the spiritual essence, decompose and further bind and strengthen that Nganga. And it's supposed to be in like at its core, like an alchemical thing. Granted, I'm not talking about, and nor do I advocate the sacrificing of chickens or small animals or anything like that, but we have to look culture by culture. I'm also not going to judge an indigenous culture. I'm going to judge for human sacrifice. There are lines, but like chickens and I don't know. I'm not going to do it. And I'm not going to recommend you go out and do it. And certainly not in America. But if, you know, like I said, I'm just not going to judge an indigenous culture like that. So, because I was not raised up in it. And there are certain things like, certain cultures eat dog. I'm not going to judge them for that. But anyway, like it's all about intention. Obviously, a Christian is not going to be on board with any chicken cutting like that. But me, it's all about intention. And we'll get into that more. But in terms of Palo Mayombe, long story short, I find it very interesting the idea of, like, think of it like this. Regardless of the metaphysics here, how would you feel if you had a cauldron in your backyard, in your shed, that was full of decomposing chicken heads? How would you feel? Regardless of the metaphysics, that would create a whole different headspace for you. Even if no one else knew, you would forever know. And you would always, to yourself, be the person that had that cauldron of chicken heads in the backyard with the spirit attached to it. And that would create a radically different headspace. Even if it was in the back of your brain, in the recesses, it would cook there and it would incubate, and it would stew mimetically. Mimetics are the study of psychological viruses, good and bad. And when those viruses incubate and then expand, and it seems to, in some cases, open up faculties of the brain that it's not like we didn't have access to before, but we had no reason to access them. I don't know what all that means. This is just a beginning point. What we're accessing is a different question, but I do think that that's the trail of breadcrumbs that leads towards metaphysics. We're talking about hypnosis, trance states, psychedelic states of consciousness, altered states of consciousness in general. So that's how I feel about it. Like this can be practical leading into the greater all the same. So Constanzo scares the shit out of me, not just because of the kinds of things he did, but the fact that from a practical level, this seems to be like the most working, like esoteric magician, one of the most of like any cult leader. Most of them are just bullshitting nonsense, just talking about whatever insanity. Like in the first episode, my methamphetamine and LSD and bedazzled jackets, and it was going to be my cult paradise, and you all live in doghouses out back. We'll talk about that later. That could still be a good idea, but for real, Constanzo was insane, but he he was smart. He he wasn't criminally insane where he didn't know what he was doing. He definitely knew what he was doing, because that's what criminal insanity is on a technical level. But he was obviously evil to his core. And I don't know what all he achieved, but if you want to say, if nothing else, he achieved a lot of tangible power and fear, and, on a level that few of us can comprehend. Very, very few of us. And if anybody can comprehend those kinds of power and fear, those levels, I don't want you to listen to this podcast. You sound very, very evil. And that's why I read the Philip K. Dick part at the beginning. So that's what Constanzo would do. Once he got a footing, and he grew up in Miami. His mother was into Palo Mayombe. She knew people who were into it, and apparently he grew up in this offshoot that was very much into the really dark side of things. Constanzo was like Richard Ramirez meets Aleister Crowley. Absolutely insane. And he didn't do any drugs either. He wanted to stay pure and keep his powers honed in. His drug was fear and adrenaline, like instilling fear in others. So let's see. There's a lot of different. Let me talk about this. Mark Kilroy. We'll set the stage because there's a lot of different angles to the narco-satanist story, but the ending is kind of, well, the story of Mark Kilroy is what brought the House of Cards really down. And it is the story. See, these guys were kidnapping and torturing to instill fear in people because fear was part of the ritual. And then they would sacrifice them and use certain parts of them, depending on the circumstance, to feed their nganga, and they would put in the cauldron. They would kill a strong man if they wanted strength for the nganga. They would kill people with these certain attributes to bestow upon the nganga, which would then protect them. Constanzo was telling these people that they were invisible to police, that they were invincible, that they were just straight up walking warlock magicians for Mexican Satan. And they technically didn't worship any form of Satan, but archetypally speaking, yes, this is obviously satanic, but that's like loose. We're talking about arch evil. I mean, because these guys were definitely evil. This is definitely black magic. But in spring break of 1989, college student Mark Kilroy went to Matamoros, Mexico to enjoy his time with his homies and the legal drinking age of 18. And Matamoros, Mexico is, which I know I'm pronouncing super white. Please forgive me. But it is what it is. Matamoros, Mexico is right next to, it's separated by like a river from Brownsville, Texas. So kids go to Brownsville, Texas, and they hop over to Matamoros and enjoy themselves a good old spring break. And that's what, Mark Kilroy thought was going on. That's how it started. And then after, one of the nights there, I can't remember if it was the first one or not, him and his friends are walking back over the bridge to get to their car, head back home. Mark stops to take a quick pisser in the bushes. They decide not to wait for him, and they never see him again. They wait for him at the car. They never see him again. Don't leave your friends to piss alone in strange places. Jeez. For real. Rest in peace, Mark. This is what happens. So, the narco-Satanists, they've been walking around as police officers for some time. They have badges. They're just walking around with impunity. They think that they are these straight up black magic warlocks that are untouchable. So they go and they tell Mark he is arrested for public intoxication, and they gotta bring him down. Bring him down and book him in the old precinct. And Mark just follows him, but he does make a break for it at some point. And he actually, if he had just kept running another 60 seconds or something, just a little further down, he would have made it to a main downtown strip where there was still thousands of people walking around, and he would have been able to get someone's attention or blend in well enough to get away. But when he slipped out of their grasp and they realized he was getting away, they yelled freeze. They really worked with their police disguise, and poor Mark froze. So they bound him up, threw him, I think it was back into a van, and they brought him to a ranch where they first tortured him in a variety of ways, and then they sharpened the machetes and gave the contents of his skull to the cauldron. Yeah. So these guys are sick. Not like sick, bro. They're very sick. Like I said, that's what brought the House of Cards down, because people definitely reported Mark Kilroy missing, and Brownsville PD got invested. How could they not? And they thankfully had some connections in Matamoros with the federal police in Mexico, and that got them a foothold around there. So they started getting boots on the ground, and they started going in to Matamoros and doing investigations, and then going back to Brownsville and following up and doing paperwork. And but it's interesting because American police doing this kind of investigation, boots on the ground in Mexico, things are a little different in Mexico. You don't even need search warrants. You know, if you have the the federal police backing you, that's it. You got a gold star. So, but it still was not easy. Took a lot of hunting down leads, and took a little bit of getting lucky even, because one of the dumb ones of the group, Seraphine, the narco-Satanists, eventually got caught because he thought he was invulnerable and invisible, and eventually started spilling the beans about their torture sacrifice ranch, about the Nganga, about it all. And we're about to jump into a break here. We're at the top of the half hour. You're listening to Black Hoodie Alchemy. I am Anthony Tyler. We're here on the Fringe FM, and stay tuned. We'll be right back to talk more about the narco-Satanists and try and bring a little bit of positive light to the end of this, to a wrap up here.
Thousands of people are having paranormal experiences with ghosts, demons, shadow people, dogmen, Bigfoot, and more. Their stories need to be told, and they are being told. Dark Waters, a renowned storyteller, invites you to join at IamDarkWaters.com. For just a few dollars a month, you can listen to some of the most hair-raising and compelling stories on the planet. You'll have access to real-life stories told by Dark Waters, thousands of hours of content. Their encounters are being told, and told by the best, at IamDarkWaters.com. Listen to stories like The Rabbit Man, the Dogman Encounter in Silas, Alabama, The Man with No Face, The Other Woman, A Day Ahead of the Devil, Dogman Murder in Hurricane Ida, Even a story of someone trying to kill a dogman. Louisiana water demon stories. Sign up today and become a member at IamDarkWaters.com. That's IamDarkWaters.com.
Do you want to escape the simulation?
Well, join me, Jess Rogie, every week as we explore a variety of different realities to help expand our minds and find out a little more about this world we live in. Escape the simulation with me live every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern here on thefringe.fm.
Listen, as we explore the mysteries of the universe, the unknown, high strangeness, consciousness, and our human potential. Lighting the Void is an eclectic program that strives to ignite the late night with stimulating conversations. Join us on The Fringe FM.
From parapsychology to pop conspiracy, and from parapolitics to health and esoterica, I'm Ryan Gable, host of The Secret Teachings, and I'll bring you all of this and more 5 nights a week right here on The Fringe FM. By using critical thinking and objectivity as keys to understanding, utilizing, and appreciating the secret teachings of all ages. You can catch The Secret Teachings Monday through Friday right here on The Fringe FM after Joe Roop and Lighting the Void.
Musicians experience a lot of frustration with music marketing and promotion. They have no idea how to get their music heard, and they're spending hours sending emails, making phone calls, and hitting up their friends to promote them. With our industry-powered digital marketing platform, we can set up your media plan in minutes. Our team will automatically distribute your music across all the best channels, so you can focus on actually making the music. Submit your music today on our website at mymusicpromoter.com. That's mymusicpromoter.com.
Yohoy there, it's Gigi from Shift Happens, and you're listening to the one and only Fringe FM. Well, at least I'd imagine so. I'm not sure how else, you'd be hearing this.
This is Black Hoodie Alchemy. Thanks for tuning back in and sticking with us through that little commercial break there. I am Anthony Tyler, and we are talking about Adolfo Constanzo and the NARCO-SATANISTs. Now, before the break, we were talking about how the dumb one of the group of these NARCO-SATANISTs, I think some of these guys, they had to have some sort of discretion. I don't know how, clearly they took this stuff literally, and they very much believed all their powers, but they had to know that some of it was like allegorical or something, because everyone maintained composure. They weren't blasting their guns off and wagging their dick in front of police. So one of the dudes, Seraphine, he just took it too literally for too long and got too cocky and just really thought that he was like, the police could not touch him, and started speeding away from him and got in a chase, like a high-speed chase that brought them to the ranch. They didn't know what was going on at the ranch, and he was brought into custody, and there was some like drug things, and they still had to flesh out the whole situation. They had no idea. And then in custody, Seraphine is just so out of his mind that eventually he just starts to talk about what's going on at the ranch, and because he really truly believes that he is going to have total metaphysical impunity here. Like, Constanzo is just going to walk in, break him out, and these people are going to be like Men in Black, with amnesia or something. I mean, I don't know exactly what he thought, but he did think that all this was going to work out fine and that he was going to be untouchable. So in that sort of like classical, sort of in a like a, as I've seen footage of him talking, he's like sheepish, but what he does seems very evil masterminded, like the mastermind revealing his plans to the helpless villain or a hero, where he kind of just starts rambling to the cops about all this human sacrifice and things, and then he eventually brings them up to the ranch, and they find not just Mark Kilroy's body, but they find, I can't remember how many bodies were exactly found on that ranch, but I know that the cult is they have like 13 confirmed kills, and there's like an estimate of up to 23. So they were not screwing around. So they caught the rest of the cult members, and then Constanzo made it out, and so did his priestess Sarah, who, by the way, was just your regular old college student in Brownsville. By day, Brownsville community college student. By night, a satanic priestess. What has the world come to? But like genuinely wild. Hard to wrap your head around. Genuinely wild. I don't understand. I don't understand how you could compartmentalize like that. That's just crazy. I mean, it makes a little more sense that these guys were at least living it, but how do you maintain a regular life? It happens more often than we think. I'm not getting into satanic panic here, but let's be real. You know, I brought it up, so let's talk about it a little bit. This is part of what really spurred satanic panic as we know it initially in the modern era. Things like this, the McMartin preschool scandal, which was ultimately a lot of crock. Some people will get really mad at me saying that, some deep conspiracy theorists, but look, we got to draw a line somewhere. I'm not going to get into it, but it did help stir satanic panic. And then there was also the whole Son of Sam and the Process Church of the Final Judgment. That's something I'll get into soon too, because that story, I know people, like I'm not friends with him, but I've talked to him in cordial ways about research a couple times. Josh Zeman, the director of the documentary Cropsy that some people might recognize, and then he did the Sons of Sam documentary because he was basically the inheritor of Maury Terry's research, Maury Terry's work, all of it. And Maury Terry was the guy who wrote The Ultimate Evil, which was the book relating Son of Sam to the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Now, we could talk about the Ultimate Evil, and you know, it definitely gets into it. Built the satanic panic hype to exponential degrees. But Josh Zeman is definitely not someone who's into. He does not feel the satanic panic at all, even though he understands certain realities to these things. Satanic panic in and of itself, as we know it, as it exists culturally, is just not helpful to anyone because it's inaccurate. It paints inaccurate views of beliefs, and it paints inaccurate scales of like how often these things are going on. You know, because obviously the vast majority of anybody who considers themselves Satanists is an atheistic, LaVey sort of Satanist. But I digress. These things, along with the NARCO-SATANISTS and some others, but yeah, these were three big ones. And there's some truth to, I think the fact that at least Berkowitz didn't act alone. I think he was hanging out with some really weird people, and maybe at the very least, those really weird people were hanging out with extra weird people who were doing some vaguely organized things. But it's not like you could take that to levels of the Illuminati per se. But the Process Church of the Final Judgment is weird. And that's a cult we'll talk about. But the narco-Satanist thing, this is not embellished at all. If anything, just the beliefs are embellished. Like the beliefs of the people, clearly. But not just the cultists, even like in Mexico, there is a different and more pervasive level of spiritual belief than there is here in the U.S., even still. So while this investigation was going on, the Mexican police were also enlisting the help of certain mystics, to help with divination and good luck and breaking hexes and different things. But I really like it because they were doing this on top of doing a really good job at their police work. And I can't speak for every single policeman here, but the people who headed this investigation in conjunction with the American police did a very good job. So, and they were no nonsense men. They were very serious about taking down crime lords in Mexico and had done it many times by then. One man in particular I'm thinking of, but I can't remember his name. It doesn't really matter to the story. He was just the head Mexican fed on the job. But every single person working that case wanted to double down and make sure that they had some mystics on their side to work with, undoing whatever Constanzo could do on his end, while being proper police officers and actually investigating. I find that really interesting. Because even if they didn't believe he had all the power he said he did, most of them clearly thought he had some sort of power. And if they didn't, well, they just wanted to play it safe anyway. And that adds a whole interesting mystical police angle to this that is just... that part is really unique. And I like that a lot. I appreciate that. And I agree with them, essentially. Look, keep it empirical, keep it skeptical. Don't get into woo. But if we look at what I talked about before, how would you feel? What kind of altered states would you cultivate if you were already sociopathic and you were already keeping chicken heads in a cauldron in your backyard? And that's just chicken heads. What about human brains? I do think, especially since very, very few of us, like the closest thing, maybe like a wartime scenario and seeing gore. But like that's really the only way you're gonna get it. Any sort of reference, like experience like that, and be just a regular public member, and that's gonna scar you, obviously. But how that feels, I don't want to know either. But I think that the further you go down certain psychological rabbit holes, the more that, the Richard Dawkins memetics, the more these memes incubate in your brain, and then they spread in one way or another, good or bad. And I think they create portals in your brain. And those portals could be just as simple as totally new ideas, states of thought, ways of living, or it could be even other things. I read a John Keel quote in the last episode that, you can reference here, but I won't read it again. So eventually, when the police find Constanzo's ranch, they don't find Constanzo, but they find the rest of them. They get them all together. I think they've all split, but they eventually get back to the ranch, and they found the bodies, and eventually they round up everyone but Constanzo and the priestess, Sarah. Aldretti, I think her last name is. And these guys all still feel pretty untouchable. I think Seraphine, the first one, has been a little rattled at this point. But none of them seem fazed. They're all stone cold killers in the most evil. Like I said, this is like Aleister Crowley meets Richard Ramirez. It's absolutely insane. And to weed out Constanzo, apparently one of the mystics working with the police says if you want to flush him out, you need to burn his cabin, his shack with the Nganga, send him a message. He won't be able to handle that. So they do. They do a televised broadcast of the burning of his shack. And then they dispose of the Nganga. You can't burn a cauldron, but you can burn everything else and then dump the cauldron in a far off bush where no one's ever going to see it, or however you do that. I have no idea, but they did that. Whew. My God, I can only, yeah. So that reportedly actually sent Constanzo on a frenzy. Like a real, that was like, this is the thing, like whether or not there was actually any spirit attached to that, Constanzo did some sort of weird psychological mimetic mind melding with this whole complex in his psyche. And when they destroyed the shack with the Nganga, it destroyed a whole chunk of his psyche. It was almost as if he was using, in an allegorical sense, that weird fucked up cauldron as like a thumb drive to his own consciousness. That's how he perceived it. And once that was gone, he lost all that hard work and data, and couldn't and just went on a frenzy, and like reportedly started burning money and just self-destructive in a frenzied self-destruction. Put it like that. And, you know, I can't remember from here because I'm not looking at any notes, but I know this story well. And so I'm just telling you as I know it. And I'm only telling the details that I remember for certain. And that leads to him getting caught. I can't remember how exactly, but it leads to him getting caught. They say he shows up, when the police show up, he has self-inflicted gun wounds. So he killed himself. But I heard the ranking officer from Brownsville on the case in an interview talk about how there was like 20-something bullet holes in Constanzo, and how he believed that, not that it really matters with someone like this, let's be real, but he believed that the Mexican PD just shot him the hell up because they were terrified of him. You know, they knew that even if they could, so if they weren't able to capture him, they would be tortured and sacrificed probably in the most horrendous ways imaginable. Or they could put him in prison where he had ample time to work his black magic however long he wanted. No one wanted to chance that, so they killed him. And then not long after, the priestess Sarah Aldretti was caught. And that wraps it up, really. Not the episode yet, but that is the timeline, essentially, of the whole narco-satanist thing. Let's talk about a little bit of follow-up here, though. Like, some of the recurring themes between this episode and last episode. The idea of belief as a tool to utilize the imagination to open up vastly altered states of consciousness for positive and negative reasons. And how perhaps those states of consciousness might open up certain portals, energetic portals, in rare circumstances. See, these things start with the imagination. They start with Jungian projections. But I think the more you look at unexplainable phenomena, the more you look at, you know, because I consider this unexplainable phenomena at this point. You know, it's not a ghost story. No, these guys weren't levitating or anything. No Bigfoot in this story. But how this happened, what the hell happened? It's getting in the minds of all these people and understanding the human psychology of how this all unraveled. Pretty damn unexplainable. Not to mention esoteric in the darkest, worst ways. And these people really believed what they were doing. They were, and their spirituality was that of predator and prey. They did not believe they were evil. They thought that they were fulfilling the natural cycle of things. That they were just a lion to the antelope. And if that isn't creepy, I don't know what is. So remember this. You know, the takeaway from something like this is to remember that these things don't always happen. You know, it's few and far between. But they do happen. And you should be thankful for the life you live. I know I am. I'm very grateful. I'm extremely grateful for the life I live. It's pretty modest. It's nothing crazy. But it's nice. And it's not anything to do with this kind of shit. That's part of the reason I appreciate looking into these dark kinds of things, because I don't let it linger with me. You know, I leave it here, and in my own way, I say prayers for the victims, and I don't just treat it as entertainment. You know, it's insane to hear people talk about their quote-unquote favorite serial killers. These are not baseball cards. But I do find it fascinating. I mean, I'm not going to mince words there, but we need to be very careful to not keep lines in the sand, right? And even if you are the one setting the rat trap, you're eventually going to be the rat. It's only a matter of time. So do you want to make peace with the universe, the cosmos, God? Or do you want to just gamble and see how far you can get on your own until you crash and burn? See, I think it's part of the great work to learn to work with the cosmos. You know, that's kind of the right-handed path. But there's good parts of the right and left-handed path. Their approaches. One's more outward, one's more inward. But we'll talk about that some other time. I'd like to leave you with that. Be thankful and grateful, everybody. And I hope you got something out of this episode. And, you know, we'll wrap it up here. But I'd like to say thank you one more time to my homie Duncan. Thanks to Justin Otto. Go check out Dharma Junkie podcast. Go check out New View DEW. View without the E or without the I. Links in the description. Go check out my website, divemind.net. Catch me here on The Fringe every Monday evening, 6 p.m. Pacific time for new episodes. And then you could catch me on Spotify and Apple the day after. Go check out my books, Hunt Manual and Dive Manual. Lots of similar food for thought. I actually talk about Constanzo in Hunt Manual, among other names. And thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you tuning in, sincerely. And I hope you join me for another round of the COINTELPRO debriefing. Damn it! Why do I keep saying that? I mean, the padded room where I just sit in a straitjacket and laugh at the wall. Thank you. Have a good one.